Boy, talk about a tough act to follow, right? Good morning. Our opening words are from the poet Hafiz, from the gift translated by Daniel Ladinsky. Leave the familiar for a while. Let your senses and bodies stretch out like a welcomed season onto the meadow and shores and hills. Open up to the roof. Make a new watermark on your excitement and love. Like a blooming night flower, bestow your vital fragrance of happiness and giving upon our intimate assembly. Change rooms in your mind for a day. All the hemispheres in existence lie beside an equator in your heart. Greet yourself in your 1,000 other forms as you mount the hidden tide and travel back home. All the hemispheres in heaven are sitting around a fire chatting while stitching themselves together into the great circle of you. Our opening hymn is Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing, number 126. Please rise as you are willing and able.
And we join in the words of our unison affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ley. Este es nuestro gran pacto, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros. May it be so. And again, good morning.
Good morning.
After the prelude, I think all there is to do is to announce the closing hymn. Oh, there's some other things going on here. Yes. Welcome if you are here for the very first time. There are blue connection cards in the pews to stay in touch, and there is the welcome table as you make your way to Community Hour. whatever is working or not working in your life, it is good to be here together. And welcome as well to those who have been here forever. And there are at least some new visitors here, and I call your attention to one in particular, and that is Arnie Hobbs. And wave your hand, Arnie Hobbs. Arnie Hobbs and I were teenagers together in Liberal Religious Youth, LRY, which was the UU Youth Organization. How many of you are former LRYers? There are some former LRYers. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I don't think we ever had sex, Arnie. It's possible. This is a Unitarian Universalist church. We gather on the basis of shared values, notably freedom and reason and tolerance, freedom of belief, freedom of unbelief, reason, the use of reason. One need not check one's brains at the door, and toleration, a radical inclusion, and a realization that we need people who are other than ourselves and to encounter people different from ourselves to be whole. There are a lot of announcements in the order of service, and you can read them as well as I can. There is a Valentine's concert this afternoon here at 4 o'clock. There is going to be an additional training for sanctuary volunteers. I've mentioned before that we have more than 200 people trained as sanctuary volunteers so that we can provide 2 volunteers here to be with our guest 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And there are 2 more trainings scheduled, one this coming Thursday from 7 to 9 p.m., and then another one on Monday, the 26th of February from 1 to 3 p.m. And you're welcome to participate in those. The Religious Education Committee has given me a pronouncement here, which I will pronounce. This year, the RE Committee completed implementing fall session programming that addressed the themes raised at the March 2015 RE Forum. The RE Committee is hosting another RE Forum on Sunday, March 11, the outcome of which would highlight next steps in further developing First Parish's program of religious education for our children and youth. Today, we are introducing a questionnaire. Pay no attention to that man behind the pulpit. That will help formulate the themes for the RE Forum. It's for everyone in the congregation to fill out: kids, youth, parents, teachers, and all parishioners. That means all of you folks. Everyone who completes a questionnaire today will receive chocolate. The questionnaires will be handed out at the end of the service, and there will be more available during community hour in the common room. Look for the table with the big question mark. After today, the questionnaire will still be available in hard copy. It will also be sent to you online. Our incomparable acting parish minister, Lisa Perry Wood, is leading the service today, and I think it's time to turn it over to you, Lisa.
Thank you. So as I am getting my props from behind the pulpit, I'm going to ask the junior youth group members, any of you who are here, and any of the seekers to just come and join me and keep me company up here. Come on up. Or is it come on down? Come on, come on. If you think this is you, it's probably you. All right. So you could actually turn and, yeah, because I'm going to do something this way. All right? Up here. Actually, I'm going to do it over here. I'm going to tell a story that probably everybody has heard this story before, but I'm going to add a little extra. Lost my prop here. I'm going to add a little extra to it, so Well, you'll see. So once there was a great lion, big and strong, and he was striding through the forest, the king of all he surveyed, waving his mane in the breeze. And at the same time, on the other side of the forest, there was a little mouse creeping through the forest. And pretty soon, the lion saw that mouse and boom, caught him with his big paw. Well, the mouse was very scared, and he pleaded, "Please, Sir Lion, please don't hurt me, because someday, you never know, I might be able to do something for you." Well, the lion thought that was very funny. Ho, 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 he laughed. But he was amused by the mouse, so he let him go. Off ran the mouse. Time passed. And the lion was again striding through the forest, brave and free, mane flowing in the breeze, and boom, a net came over him and caught him. He was caught by the hunters. He roared and he struggled, but he couldn't move. Well, on the other side of the forest, who do you think heard the lion? The mouse. The mouse heard him, and he said, "I'm going to go. That lion sounds like he's in trouble. I'm going to go." So he ran across the forest, and he saw the lion struggling in the net, and he started chewing with his big teeth. He started chewing that rope until he chewed and chewed and chewed, and he opened up a hole in the net so the lion could be free. And this is the thing I wanted to tell you about what happened with the lion then. And here's the picture I brought to show you. What happened with the lion then is his heart opened up and became very tender. You see him looking at the little mouse? He was so amazed that this little mouse would come to help him that it just broke his heart right open and made him tender-hearted. How many of you have ever felt tender-hearted? Maybe about a little animal, or a pet, or a baby, someone you know, you felt tender-hearted. So if you have felt tender-hearted, if I can put that up there, let's stay there. If you have felt tender-hearted, come here and get a couple of these hearts and take them out to people in the congregation who you think could use a little tender heart. All right? There's not enough for everybody, but some people will get them. So come and get them. Just take a couple. Just one or two. Just one or two, because we don't have enough for everybody to take some. All right? All right, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Everybody get some. Wait, let's go. Everybody get some. Just a couple. Yeah, go and give them to people. Yep. Go and find a couple of people to give them to. There you go. Yeah, you need to get a couple too. Yeah, go ahead, Julian. Just take one. There you go. You didn't get any? No? I'm sorry. And while the children are doing that, after which they are going to go out to their classes, we are going to rise and sing Spirit of Life, which you will find in your order of service. We sing it in English and then in Spanish. So please rise as you are willing and able and sing Spirit of Life.
Good morning. I'm Randy Courier, a member of the lay pastoral team, and I invite you now to come up and light a candle and share your joys and concerns. And I'll also be here after the service if you'd like to light a candle more privately. And I'll light one more candle for all that we hold in our hearts in silence.
Let us take a moment to hold in our hearts those sorrows that have been spoken aloud and all those sorrows that are still held within our hearts. Amen. Our reading this morning is from the poet Naomi Shihab Nye, and she tells this story of writing her poem, Kindness. Nye and her husband were on a 3-month honeymoon traveling in Latin America. On a bus in Colombia, they were robbed of everything they had, everything. Standing in a daze in the town square where they disembarked, a local man came up to them. He asked if he could help, and they told him their story in imperfect Spanish. His eyes softened, and he simply listened. Then he said, "I am so sorry that happened to you." Nye then waited in the square while her husband left, hitchhiking to the next town to reinstate their traveler's check. Some of you remember what those are. And as she sat there alone and anxious, she says this poem was spoken to her in a woman's voice across the square. Says Nye, she was only the secretary for these lines.
Kindness by Naomi Shihab Nye. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever.
Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you. How he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive.
Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth.
Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to mail letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere like a shadow or a friend.
Freely we have received. Freely give for the good work of this congregation within and far, far beyond these walls. Our offering will now gratefully be received.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Last spring, in a surprise TED Talk, some prominent science and technology leaders heard Pope Francis call for a revolution of tenderness to sweep through all countries, changing workplaces and communities and shifting the balance of power in the world. Hearing about that made a powerful impression on me, and I wondered, what would that revolution even look like? How different would our relationships, our institutions look with more tenderness in all of our encounters? How would it change our own lives? Tenderness, said Francis, is not weakness, it is fortitude. The more powerful you are, the more your actions have an impact on people, the more responsible you are to act humbly. If you don't, your power will ruin you and you will ruin the other. In 2010, the U.S. Supreme Court Citizens United decision extended First Amendment rights that had been previously reserved for individuals to corporations. And if corporations now have those rights, shouldn't we also expect them to act like the best of individuals? Hold them to the highest standards of humanity, operating with generosity and kindness and love? What an unbelievable world that would be, right? And the crazy thing is, there's just a chance that by doing that, they would be even more successful than they have ever been. I have a friend, an investment counselor, who has been working on that thesis for years, that companies who treat their workers the most fairly with the best compensation and benefits, including generous family leave and vacation time, actually will have the greatest profit margins. I don't think he has enough evidence in yet, but it is a very hopeful idea. Real corporate generosity could mean much more than grants for schools and nonprofits, as good as those are, or big philanthropic programs in carefully selected areas. But what about insisting on wild generosity of spirit, kind of Oprah style, operating in the best interest of workers and their families, extending that spirit through them to their products and services? I do know that some individual leaders are modeling that right now. But if corporations are people, why not insist that they operate humanely? The reality is, though, that the most successful movements get mobilized at the grassroots level. If we want to influence corporations to be more humane, more tender toward the most vulnerable, as Pope Francis suggests, we can't wait. We will need to begin by modeling that in our own lives. We will need to think differently about ourselves and about each other. One of my personal heroes is Father Greg Boyle. Now, don't worry, not all of my heroes are Catholic clerics, but if you don't know Father Greg's book, Tattoos on the Heart, about his organization Homeboy Industries, it is a pretty great read. He's been working for decades in South Central LA with some of the most violent and entrenched gangs in this country. And this is what he says about reaching these young men and women hardened by all that life has thrown at them. Homeboy Industries seeks to be what the world is ultimately invited to become, a community of kinship, exquisite mutuality, and tenderness. We stand against forgetting that we belong to each other and for inclusion, nonviolence, unconditional and compassionate loving kindness, and acceptance. At Homeboy, he says, we believe that only the soul that ventilates the world with tenderness has any chance of changing it. Ventilate the world with tenderness. Now, that's a corporate tagline we could really get behind. Father Greg is known to the homies as G, and he tells this story about giving a blessing to a kid named Louis. I told him, says G, you know, Louis, I'm proud to know you, and my life is richer because you came into it. When you were born, you know, the world became a better place, and I'm proud to call you my son, even though, and I don't know why I decided to add this part, he says, even though at times you can really be a huge pain in the ass. And Louis looks up at me and he smiles and he says, "The feeling's mutual, G." And you know, says Father Greg, suddenly there's kinship so quickly. You know, you're not just sort of this delivery system, but maybe I return him to himself. And there's no doubt that he returned me to myself. And that's what I really want to talk about today, is about returning ourselves to ourselves. Last weekend, I participated in a retreat on eliminating racism, a program developed by Meadville Lombard Theological School called Beloved Conversations. 55 of us, Concord and Lexington UUs, all white, talked honestly and openly about what it is that keeps us from reaching out to people who are very different from us, even though we know that we long to be close. First, we know there's embarrassment. Will I do it right? Even shame or guilt. What person of color would want to get close to a white person like me? But when we dug way down, at the heart of it, for each of us, was the fear that we are just unlovable. Because most of us find it very hard to fully love ourselves. We're so self-critical. We keep thinking that we come up short. And if we can't love ourselves fully, then we can't be sure we have anything to offer anybody else. Most especially a person of color, or from another culture, or speaking another language. Of course, as you might suspect, these feelings stem from our earliest childhood experiences. For many of us, it starts in our families or on the school playground. For me, it had to do with being born with a skin disease that caused painful blisters on my hands, feet, and face. At school and on the playground, this was the era of being labeled with cooties. Some of you remember that. It was difficult, and I internalized those messages. You know how they say sticks and stones will break your bones and names will never hurt you? Well, guess what? They do hurt. And my family was wrapped up in denial and that stiff upper lip that comes with a WASP upbringing, and they weren't really very helpful. It took me a long time, years of therapy, as well as the love of some very dear people, to recover from those experiences. And let's be clear, I am not 100% recovered. None of us recover 100% from our early hurts. But what we can do is recognize them, understand what happened, extend tenderness and compassion to ourselves, to the child who didn't have anyone to tell her she was just fine. We have to keep doing that over and over again. Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh suggests that we say to ourselves, "It's okay, sweetheart," as we picture holding our young selves tenderly and reassuringly. So try something with me right now. Just close your eyes if you feel like doing that, or gaze softly downward. Bring to mind someone in your life, someone that you find easy to love. Could be a child, a family member, a friend or lover, even a beloved pet. Now imagine surrounding them with a golden halo of loving light, and hold them in that light of your love for a moment. And now let that image go and picture yourself as a young child, young enough that you can really see your own innocence, and bring that golden light of love to surround your own image, and hold that there for a moment. And finally, let that image go and imagine that golden halo of light bathing you as you sit here, just pure love washing over you. Taking a couple of deep breaths, just breathe in that light, the pure light of who you really are, your essential goodness. And now you can open your eyes when you're ready. When we do this brief exercise, we start where it's easy to feel love, and then slowly turn that toward ourselves. But we can work on bringing even those we have real difficulty in loving into that light. It's a simple practice, but one that can have powerful results. Buddhist master Chogyam Trungpa says, we should never give up on anyone. Never push anyone away because it creates a wall around our hearts. Beginning by extending the light of love to ourselves melts away that wall bit by bit. This reminds me of a sign I put up on my office door in the years I spent as a principal of a K-8 charter school. Throughout the day, students, teachers, parents, community members would come and sit waiting outside my door to meet with me. My little sign on the door often sparked a reaction, and this is what it said. You are good. You have always been good. You were born that way. Nothing you could say or do could ever change that. It is your essential nature, the truth of who you are. You are good. As I said, the sign was often a conversation starter, even controversial. People, adults and older kids, would sometimes come in and debate with me about it, arguing, let's be clear, against their own essential goodness. A few of them left with an inkling that it might be true. And why was this simple statement so powerful? Because somewhere deep down, against evidence that we ourselves provide, we deeply want to believe that this might actually be true about ourselves, that our essential nature is goodness. I believe it to be true. Perhaps against evidence that we see every day in our world, I still believe that every one of us is born good and retains that goodness deep within. I was always amazed by the people who claimed it was a dangerous policy, that believing in our own inherent goodness and the inherent goodness of all other human beings is a dangerous idea. When I worked in the mental health system in Lynn in the 90s, we were assisting people who had been incarcerated in the mental health system for decades, making a transition into community life after a state mental hospital had closed down. Our day program staff found some of our clients' behaviors disturbing, even frightening. So I asked them to picture each of our folks as an infant in their mother's or father's arms, since clearly they each had been at one time. To picture how they had been the cherished babe of loving parents, and to hold that image in their hearts and minds as they worked with our people to recover for some very tough life experiences. To do that, I suggested, you have to start by picturing yourself that way. See yourself as that infant in arms. Feel the love of your own parent. That love, that goodness is still there inside of us, and it is not dangerous to believe that. It is actually the most secure way to live in this world. Buddhist meditation teacher Tara Brach tells the story of a woman who ended up in a small town diner on a road trip with her husband and one-year-old son. As soon as they sat down, she noticed an old man across the room, with a grizzled beard and wild hair and shabby clothing. He was sitting at a table on the other side of the room. Immediately, her young son locked eyes with the man, and the two of them began grinning and talking to each other, to her increasing horror. The old geezer kept up a patter of talk about what a great boy he was, as her son babbled nonsense with increasing animation and delight. The woman and her husband finished their meal hastily, and he told her he'd pay the bill and bring the car around. She should just get the baby out of there. Picking up her little boy, she worked her way across the crowded room and suddenly found herself face to face with the old man. He looked at her questioningly as the baby reached out to him. The woman froze, then met the man's eyes, which were a bit wild but full of sadness. "Can I hold your baby?" he asked. She hesitantly handed over her son, who was by then straining to greet his new friend. Again, they babbled and cooed at each other while the restaurant grew quiet in mixed horror and anticipation. Finally, the old man handed back the baby, who was reluctantly pried out of his arms, to his mother. "Thank you," he said, "for giving an old man the best gift anyone ever gave me." Sometimes extending ourselves and our love to the other is worth the risk. This week I heard that the United Kingdom has appointed a minister of loneliness because they've learned what a huge problem it is and how it's affecting the mental and physical health of their citizens. Maybe corporations should be required to appoint a kindness officer or vice president of tenderness. But let's not wait for that to happen. Let's just start now. In the same way that the children distributed those tender hearts this morning, maybe we could drop a Valentine's card to someone who could use some cheering up, or make a call, or send an e-card. Just sprinkle a little more tenderness around, a little more kindness as we go through our lives. The wonderful thing about when we do that is that we feel happier and warmer and more tender toward ourselves. And that is what we are going for. I love that the Dalai Lama says his religion is kindness. And I think Unitarian Universalism is also a religion of kindness. So let's go full out for a wholehearted, full-on revolution. All we'll really need is a child's heart, or the heart of a lion moved by the actions of a mouse, to be fully tender-hearted. Blessed be. Amen. Now we will rise as you are willing and able and sing hymn number 134, Our World is One World.